Hello, everyone. Here Ulises Lavaroni for Cyclical Dreams. Here we are with Brandon Reisig, and it's a pleasure to be with you. Hello.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Okay, it's a pleasure for us to have your new release on Cyclical Dreams, and for the first time, and we want to know about your music and how do you arrive to music and how do you arrive to electronic music? It was the same thing, or you first start with another, I don't know, traditional instruments, and then you go into machines?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what happened. I grew up in a small college town in Athens, Ohio. And when I was around 11 or so, a lot of my friends had taken interest in music, and no one had a bass player. And my dad was owned a part of a guitar shop called the Blue Eagle in Athens. And my dad was like, well, let's get you a bass. And so I started playing bass in punk bands and rock bands and stuff like that. Was kind of a brat for a long time. I didn't even like people use pedals. I thought it was cheating, and stuff like that. Which is funny because growing up, I loved Devo and Brainiac and the Butthole Surfers, and I'm obviously they're using tons of effects, and I started realizing that and circuit bending. I started circuit bending um, in my early 20s when I lived in Memphis, Tennessee, and that's kind of what started pulling me into the synth side. Um, it's kind of a natural progression, I think, going from cracking open speaking spells to playing with modules and synths and stuff. So that's kind of how that led me into electronic music. Um, learning kind of by doing uh, in that way. And honestly, I started when we moved out to the Hocking Hills here. I started working more into modular and didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I reached out to a friend, Lisa Belladonna, and she couldn't have a better person to point me in the right direction, really.
Sure.
So I've been full speed ahead in the modular and analog synthesis world ever since.
Great. So since then, you were releasing material and playing also live.
Yeah. Putting stuff out on Bandcamp, and I play a lot in Athens, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, and done a few out of town shows, Chicago, Midwest.
Great. And about your process, is the same working on studio than playing alive? I mean, sometimes some creators just play on the studio and recording and then maybe editing something, and the others works like a layering process, very architecture. How is your workflow about?
It's definitely different from live to the studio. Live, I kind of like to go in with, I'll have a couple of songs that I do and kind of weave that with improv, and just kind of go with where the music's taking me and the equipment might be taking me, right? But in the studio, I generally like start with an idea, a concrete idea of I want to accomplish this, and of course, I mean, it rarely is exactly that, but you make a lot of discoveries along the way of trying to find that.
Sure.
That's a lot of my studio process now. It used to be more chaotic and circuit bending. Oh wow, that's a cool sound. How can I mix that with something that might be palatable, or not palatable, depending on what I'm going for. Yeah,
that's about like a kind of experimentation, recording experimentation, and because the material is completely different.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean,
well, you are going to release a new album via Cyclical Dreams, Buenos Aires-based label that we are so proud to have your release on our label. And what is interesting is how was the process of this work? It was the same. You were experimenting and then collect some amount of experimentation and then go for an album, or did you plan before, like, okay, I want to do a concrete plan and then go with some experimenting and things, you know?
Little mixed bag.
Both words.
You know, like there's a track on the album Hawkwind that I was outside just trying to record. You know, I live out in the middle of the woods. We're surrounded by nature. I get a lot of cool field recordings that way. And I was out. There was a hawk going nuts, and I recorded it and started playing it back. You know, check quality, and that infuriated the hawk. And it started basically following me around, screaming at me. So I was recording that, and you know, that kind of fed into an idea of a track. But most of that album, it is inspired by trips that I'd taken often. Like when I lived in Memphis, we would drive down to New Orleans quite a bit, play shows, and that's a very special drive to me and has a lot of like feeling in it, you know, like when I think about those times, it evokes something, and I just tried to translate that into music. Like kind of remember like the rhythm of the road on I-10 when you're going over the lake, and it's ta-tum, 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 you know, kind of feel that.
Great. So it's a collection of emotions and representations on electronic music. Lovely, lovely. Okay, so we are very soon it's going to be released, and we will have the pleasure to listen worldwide this new release. So we want to say thank you for your time and for all this approach to your music, which is very interesting. I have the opportunity to listen some tracks from the new album. I have a kind of little premiere about, and it was very complex electronic. You work a lot in the material. It sounds like that, and well, it's not possible listening which is a synthesizer and which is a sequence bending sometimes, but the mixing of the things are the lovely result.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's what I'm going for.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Brandon. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.